Okay, yeah, meanwhile team loads. So what I'm going to show you is I already downloaded a .NET 5 SDK for Preview 7.
Audio. So let's check quickly the audio. Good. It's working. Cool. So let's start today's meetup. Welcome to this June 2020 meetup. This time it's presented by DotNetDevs.at and by the .NET Stammtisch Linz. Short about .NetDevs.at. We are a non-profit organization about to support .NET developers with knowledge sharing and yeah, the news, organizing the meetups. You can find us on, we have a website, we are on Twitter, we have a Twitch stream. You're probably looking now at it if you see this live. We have a YouTube channel where we put all of our recordings afterwards. And we have also a Slack channel to also chat between us all if there's currently no meetup at the moment. Post all the links in the chat. And then our organizers together with the .NET Stammtisch. Gergely, do you want to say? Make the introduction.
Yeah, I would like to also say a couple of words. I'm not sure if my audio is working, and I'm not sure if people can see me.
They should hear you, they can't see you.
Okay, that's fine.
Yeah,
okay, so also welcome from our side, from .NET Stammtisch Linz. Obviously, we have a pretty complicated situation in the world, so we can't organize in-person meetups, so we thought it would make sense to team up with another Austrian meetup group, and that's how we basically found each other with the Vienna group, and we decided to organize this stuff together. I hope this will work out fine. As you can hear, people from Vienna don't speak German, so we go with English. Also, this is I would say this is a very safe way to bring people from Vienna and Upper Austria together, avoiding any physical harm. If there is any disagreement, no, that's just a joke. Anyway, so and there is one last thing that I would like to add here. So our meetup is sponsored by JetBrains, and we usually raffle a 1-year JetBrains license, and we will do that also this time. So there is one JetBrains license that you can win. If I will try to share my screen. I'm not sure if this will work. Andy, can you help me with that?
Yeah. I have to move only some windows.
Okay.
Now,
Perfect.
your screen is
that's my machine. Awesome. Yeah, so the way this works is the following. So there are the two meetup groups. So there is the .NET Community Austria meetup group, and there is also the .NET Stammtisch Linz meetup. And I pasted one message into each meetup group. And basically, if you write a plus here, then you will be in the pool, and you can win a 1-year JetBrains license, and you can select which product you wanna use. So there is, for example, ReSharper, there is Rider for .NET development, but there are also other tools like IntelliJ, the Go stuff. So you can choose one of those, and the way it works is that you will have a 1-year license, and you get all the updates. And after 1 year, you won't be able to update, but you can still use the product. So basically, you can use it unlimited for an unlimited time, but you will have the update only for 1 year. I think that's a very, very nice deal. So if you wanna participate, just write a plus. And one serious ask here: if you participate and win, please make sure that you activate your code. Otherwise, we won't get another license. Yeah, that's it from my side. So thanks.
Thank you, Gergely. So let's continue with the intro. Yeah. So thank you for all your 28 for joining us today. And yeah, thanks to our sponsors. Gergely already mentioned that the .NET Stammtisch is sponsored by JetBrains. DotNetDevs.at are sponsored by Tieto. Thanks to them for the sponsor, helps us to run the meetups. Some quick news from the community. As you know, there's this Azure Heroes community involvement from Microsoft. Talked already at the last two meetups about it, where you can collect such badges. They're depending on what you want, what you're doing. You can get some exclusive badges like Community Hero or Content Hero. There's also some Learner Hero, and everybody who hasn't it and wants it, I post a link now in the chat where you can redeem this patch. The funny thing is, the whole stuff is implemented based on a blockchain. Blockchain, bingo buzzword. But it's funny. So it's for me, it was the first time I got in touch with a blockchain as an end user, and was a cool experience. And yeah, they used it as the data store. They could probably use something else, but yeah, nice showcase for that. This badge is all of them were they have a time limit, so you can only get this until I think tomorrow 12 p.m. They are normally valid, and you can get this badge. And if you want to know more information about Azure Heroes, there is the website with all of the information here, and how also you can get to the how to get the other badges. Good. Next, some interesting events. Tomorrow, TechTalk organized intro talk and Q&A with JB Reinsberger about managing the uncertainty of legacy code. If you have time, join it. JB is a cool trainer. He knows a lot of stuff. I was already at one of his trainings. That's fun. The Zoom link is here to it. And also some weeks ago there was one already. Now the second Azure Dev Talk is coming soon. They have not yet a concrete date, but you can if it's go online, you have it at this URL. And no Outlook, no PowerPoint. So this is Azure Dev Talks. Good. Something that's will happen in the next time. Good. That was the general part. Now to our Microsoft Build the after conference talk show. The idea to it we got it after last meetups with Gergely and Martin, and yeah, let's do something else, something different this time after the build. Let's make this make a talk show out of it and talk about the topics we have there. Short, rough agenda. Now until 7:15, we have the first part. Then we make a break for 10 minutes, and then again a part about 50 minutes to the second part. For the second part, And after that TechTalk is sponsoring a Zoom call that we can then have a big group call where we see each other to do a little bit of socializing in this time. And this time I didn't forget it to mention it beforehand. Good. Now to our guests. One is missing. Where is the fifth one? There are. So our guest for today's talk show is Alexander Köplinger from Microsoft. Then we have Raoul Holzer from TechTalk, Gergely Kalapos from Elastic. We have Martin from Tieto and also Viktor from Microsoft. So I will be your moderator. Let's move now. Let's be there. For the audience on Twitch, if you have questions, please post them in the chat, and I will redirect them to our guests. We have prepared some topics. We start with this, and your input is yeah. With your input, we can make this a dynamic show and discuss about all the stuff from the build. Good. Let's start with the first topic and probably most of the bigger ones. .NET. There was a session I think with Scott Henselman and Scott Hunter, and they mentioned a lot of time .NET. So what is .NET? Let's start with Alexander. What can you say about .NET?
So the one big thing to know about .NET is that historically we had quite a few different implementations of .NET. There was Mono, then Xamarin, .NET Core, .NET Framework, and that was kind of messy because we had to basically maintain a lot of duplicate code. And the goal for .NET is basically to merge all of these implementations and converge them onto one unified base class library. So each of these .NETs use the same BCL. And that's still the goal for .NET. Xamarin and .NET Core will both use the same base class library going forward. However, one thing that changed is that we will not be releasing Xamarin based on the unified BCL with .NET 5. It will have a preview towards the end of this year, but the full story, the full stable supported stuff will be in .NET 6. So that's due to all the things that are happening around the world right now. We had to make a few schedule adjustments, but we're still full steam ahead on working on that stuff. And as I said, previews will be coming out, and I hope a lot of you will take a look at that and give feedback so we can make a really great release for .NET 6.
Cool. Yeah, we were talking now about .NET 5 and .NET 6. Can somebody quickly recapitulate for our audience why it's not .NET 5 and .NET 6? We are .NET Core 3.1, now 5. What is happening with version numbers again?
Sure. Viktor, do you want to chime in on that, or should I take that?
You can.
Okay. So yeah, as you rightly said, we had a little bit of a mess with the version numbers. So a little while ago, I think it's even like a year or a year and a half ago now, we decided to again simplify the story there and unify all the .NETs into basically one .NET. And so basically the successor of .NET Core and the successor of Mono/Xamarin will be .NET 5. And we will be moving to a yearly schedule for .NET releases. So in November 2020, we will have .NET 5, and November 2021, there will be .NET 6, and so on. So it makes the .NET releases a lot more predictable than they have been in the past. which is, I think, a good thing for customers as well. And so that's basically where everything will be moving going forward. So as you know, .NET Framework will stay on 4 point something. So that's basically, the end of the road for .NET Framework, and all the future work will be happening in the unified .NET.
Yeah, just a few additions to what Alex said, some technical details. So we will update all the package versions that we ship to NuGet with a 5.0 version. All the assembly versions will have the 5.0 version. And also when you call APIs like environment.product version, .major version, you will get something like a 5 instead of a 4.6, which you got before. So now we're not cheating anymore in terms of versions and actually returning what you would expect from the product.
Cool.
So this is some kind of cleanup.
Cool. And
maybe one.
Yeah.
If I may add one thing here, like Alex mentioned, this like a problem with like different versions. My favorite one was, this is not blaming by the way, but I think this is really funny. Like when .NET Standard 2.1 came out, like that was supported by .NET Core 3.0.
Yes.
This was my favorite.
Yeah, so that's actually a good point, because I think we got a lot of question about the future for .NET Standard. And the current plan is that the need for .NET Standard basically was to bridge the differences between like Xamarin and .NET Core. And since that's no longer needed because we have everything unified in .NET 5, generally there won't be a need for a new .NET Standard anymore. Existing binaries compiled against .NET Standard will, of course, still work on .NET 5 and .NET 6. But in the future, we hope that you won't need to target .NET Standard anymore, because you will just target .NET 5 or 6 or something like that.
Cool.
Right, so previously, I think the guidance was like, hey, if you create a library, use .NET Standard. If you create an app, use .NET Core. And now it's just .NET 5 everywhere.
Right, and actually, if you created a library with the .NET SDK toolchain, like when you type .NET new class lib, then you would get a template which says .NET Standard 2.0. And now, if you do the same with a .NET 5 SDK, you will get .NET 5 as the target framework instead of .NET Standard. So this is this is a clear message. You can use .NET 5 onwards for everything and don't need to use .NET Standard anymore.
Cool. And yeah, we already shifted to the next topic. So what's now all in .NET 5? What is the cool stuff? What's now in there? Viktor, do you have there some insights for us?
Sure. Actually, I've prepared a demo. I think
Cool.
I can share my screen, right?
Yeah. Share your screen and.
So,
Make me small that we see your screen.
Okay, yeah, meanwhile team loads. So what I'm going to show you is I already downloaded a .NET 5 SDK for Preview 7, .NET 5 Preview 7, and I will use it to create a new library, and then we'll publish the library, and then you can see some new features that we brought into .NET 5. Guys, let me know when you can see my screen.
We can see something. We have an inception moment. We see teams.
Okay. You can only see
it's only a frozen image we get.
Okay, let me try it again. Okay, screen 1. Okay, that looks better.
So something is coming. Now we see a terminal and a beautiful Windows terminal.
Okay, yeah, that's the Microsoft terminal that is now released as 1.0 stable since the build session. So what I did, I downloaded the .NET 5 SDK from this URL here. Let me see. .NET installer. So this is the GitHub page where you can always download the latest SDK. Just let's give it a minute. Okay. So if you scroll down on the README, you should be able to see the table where you can download all the master builds, the nightly builds. So what I did, I'm currently on Ubuntu, and I just downloaded the tar file, extracted it, and here we are. So when I invoke the .NET, I can see that we are using a preview. Okay, it's a preview 6 build, but the host and the runtime is preview 7. So let's go into one of the samples. So what I want to show here is just a normal Hello World application. Here you can see the program.cs file, Hello World, and I'm only adding a feed to the NuGet packages that we have for .NET 5. And here you can also already see the target framework that is set to .NET 5.0, which is the new TFM. So what I'm doing now is I'm not changing the application at all. Hello World is good enough for this. But what I'm doing is I'm invoking the .NET toolchain. Okay, hope you can see that. And I'm saying .NET publish. The runtime will be Linux x64, and I'm saying publish as a single file, which is a new mode for .NET 5. And when I do that, it should publish the whole application with all the self-contained bits on the bin debug .NET 5.0 Linux. Okay, and on the publish. And here you can see that this is kind of cheating because it's not completely a single file application, but that's your application, the SFA one. I named it that way. And then you can see we still need to place some assets like the CLR, the JIT, those files, like the native files. We still need to place them there. Maybe we will change that in the future. At the moment, we don't have any plans doing that. But you can see that we linked the whole application together into this file, and you can see it also by the file size here. This is, I think this is 52 megabytes at the moment. Going forward, so I'm not using any linker here. This is the complete, the whole .NET SDK, the whole .NET runtime. Sorry, not the SDK, the whole .NET runtime. And if we also apply a linker, then we can trim it down to less than 10 megabytes. But we will work on that going forward in the next months and years. So this was one of the features for .NET 5. There are numerous other features, like, let me search that. I already prepared a link. We invested in regular expressions quite a lot in the last months in performance of regular expressions. And here you can see that this is a computer benchmark game, and this is just measuring an application called regex Redux. And here you can see that we are now performing quite well in comparison to languages like C and C++. So currently we take 2.82 seconds. So half as fast as C native. And if we compare it with other languages like Java, here you can see Java takes 10 seconds, Node.js 9. So before we did any improvements here, we were at the same spot as Java. We were actually slower than Java. It was about 12 seconds, and now we take only 2.82 seconds. This is because our principles helped us improve the engine, the underlying engine, and apply some optimizations that you usually do when you write a regular expression library. And yeah, those are just one of the improvements. There are other topics, like we are introducing source generators. We will talk about that later. Let me quickly see what I also mentioned. So another thing is we added Windows Forms designer support to Visual Studio for .NET Core 3.1 and onwards. So now you can build a Windows Forms application, .NET Windows Forms application, and use Visual Studio Designer with it, which wasn't possible before. Yeah, and other things like we added Windows ARM 64 support. Yeah,
Cool. So at least...
Sorry, those are just a few things that are currently in my head. There are definitely a lot more, and we are posting the improvements in our blog posts, where you can find those if you type .NET in Google or Bing .NET 5 blog post preview. Then you should find all those like preview 4, preview 3, 1 and 2.
Cool. So at least now my regex are executed fast. It's only now my problem that I'm so slow writing them. Cool. This single file application, that's something nice. Finally, hopefully getting to one binary down for console applications. That would be nice.
Yeah.
Cool. Good. Do the other guests want to add something to .NET 5? Some comments from them?
I have a couple of follow-up questions. So one question
you have the questions, Gergely, not the answers.
Yeah, no, I don't have answers here. I'm here for questions. So what if, like let's say if you are a library author and you want to target multiple .NET versions, flavors, whatever, and you also want to support older versions like .NET Core 3 is long-term supported, right? So that will be here for a longer time. So what target framework?
3.1 is long-term support.
Yeah, correct. So what target framework do you use if you want to target like multiple .NET versions, including the old ones? Like for example, .NET Core 3.1, 5, maybe .NET Framework 4.8, something like that. What would you do then? And then the other question is, let's talk about that, and then maybe I.
Okay. I can take that if you want. So if you want to keep supporting .NET Standard, .NET Framework, you want to choose .NET Standard 2.0, which is supported and will be supported long term. If you want to just target .NET Core, then you can target the lowest version, which let's say is .NET Core 3.1, and you can still use the application on .NET 5, of course. If you want to implement different branches based on the target framework that you're using, like let's say you want to use some of the new system text JSON APIs in .NET 5, then you can multi-target, which means you can overload the target framework's property and specify .NET Core 3.1 and semicolon .NET 5.0.
Yeah, multi-TFMs are very helpful for
this. Speaking of TFMs, right? I think we got some new ones for .NET 5, right? So there was like runtime identifier. I heard there was something going on there.
Yeah.
Is this discussion already finished? Was there a conclusion? I remember there was a GitHub issue about the discussion about.
Yeah, let me quickly share my screen again. Can you see that?
Yeah,
yes.
You can.
Okay. So this is from the blog post, from the Markdown design file that Emo Landworth, under his Twitter handle is TerraJobs, posted. So the default TFM will be .NET 5.0. So you can see here under the comment section, if you target just .NET 5.0, you won't support Windows Forms with WPF. But if you target .NET 5.0 Windows, then you will target both WinForms and WPF. And then we have some new TFMs, which are for Android, iOS, macOS, tvOS. You can see the list here. And those will add like targeting packs, let's say targeting packs, so that you can target an API which is not part of .NET 5.0 itself. So you can build on top of .NET 5.0. I would say it's an evolution of portable class libraries, which we had a long time before, but were kind of horrible for multiple reasons. So the plan is we stick with .NET 5 or .NET 6 or whatever going forward, and then just apply TFM packs on top of it. I think that you guys mentioned What did you mention? Platform target version? Let's see, platform, no, minimum. Yeah, okay, here we have it. So we are also introducing or supporting new properties, which are not just the target framework and the identified version that we already have, but also the target platform version and the target platform min version, where you can specify the minimum OS platform version that you want to support with the TFM that you specified, and the OS platform version that you're targeting. And based on those values, then we will pick the targeting pack that applies to a specific iOS version. An example, here you can see you pick NET 5.0, iOS, let's say 12, 13, whatever. And then based on those informations and the target platform minimum version, we will pick the targeting pack for you, and you can use the APIs for iOS.
Nice.
Great. Wow.
Yes.
Okay, I see new topics for future meetups.
Right.
Cool. Gergely, this was your first question. What was the second question you had?
Yeah, I have another one. Thanks. So what about the runtime? So there is Coursera, there is Mono. Like, what do you use in .NET 5? And I'm not sure if I want to ask the question whether Mono is going away, but if you want, you can address that.
I can
That's
address
optional.
that. So the Mono runtime is definitely not going away because it's so in .NET 5 you won't have a choice of using Coursera or Mono. It's basically implied by whether you're targeting like platforms that run on the Mono runtime, like Xamarin or WebAssembly. So in those, if you're targeting one of those platforms, then you will just get Mono. And I think in the future it might be possible that you can choose for like desktop Linux or desktop Windows or whatever. There might be a way to choose between Mono or Coursera. But for now, basically, the idea is that you will get the runtime that works best on the platform that you're targeting.
Yeah, and so for again jumping in here, one thing that I wanted to add to what Alex said is, if you target one runtime, that doesn't mean that you won't get all of the improvements that we made to another runtime, because most of the files underneath are shared, like all of the managed files are shared, or let's say 95% of the managed files are shared. So both runtimes are improving, both runtimes are super fast, and they're just targeting different use cases.
Cool. Looking forward to this. Good. Viktor, you already mentioned WinForms. There were some other news about UI frameworks on build. So let's go to the next bigger topic. There were some talks about this WinUI, and there is some project that's called, I hope I used the right word, .NET Multi-Architecture User Interface, or .NET MAUI. MAUI is...
Yeah, so .NET Multi-Platform App UI.
App UI. Thank you.
Yeah, if you want to ask questions about it, I would say if Alexander wants to answer those, I think that would be best.
Yeah, let's start. So so we have WinUI, we have MAUI, we have WinForms, we have WPF, we have Blazor. All stuff with UI. Why so many? What are the difference? Can somebody give from you five give a quick overview about this 5 acronyms and what one sentence to it?
I can give a high-level overview. I'm not into too much detail in what exactly is each one doing, but so the general idea is that .NET MAUI is an evolution of Xamarin Forms as it is today. And as you might know, Xamarin Forms basically builds on top of the native UI framework for each platform. So for example, on iOS, it uses Apple's UI framework. on Android, it uses the Android UI stuff. And on Windows today, I think it uses UWP. And the goal, I think, for the future is that .NET MAUI would just build on top of WinUI. And WinUI builds the building blocks that sit underneath and expose all the native controls and all that stuff. So it's kind of like two different layers.
Okay, cool.
And then Blazor is basically another UI framework, more targeting like the web environment.
Okay, good. So MAUI and WinUI are more for desktop applications. Blazor is based on WebAssembly in the browser. Cool. And then we have additionally still our WinForms and our WBF as we know it.
Yes.
Okay, cool. Thanks for the overview. Good. Yeah. Okay. .NET MAUI based on Xamarin Forms. So we get now fully support for Windows in Xamarin Forms. Did I understood this correct?
I think that's the plan, but as I said, I'm not into too much detail there.
Cool. Does anybody of you know if there's also some Linux or Mac OS X backend in .NET MAUI?
There is in Xamarin Forms today, there is a community supported port of Xamarin Forms or of the renderer backend to GTK, which is the Linux toolkit. And so that's currently community supported. I'm not aware of plans to change that for the foreseeable future.
I think the officer at the build said that the Linux support of MAUI will be community driven, and they hope that it's community driven. But in Xamarin Forms, there's also now a macOS support. It's in preview and not fully supported. But with MAUI, it will be fully supported from Microsoft and will be delivered with MAUI at .NET 6, I think.
Yes.
Right.
Cool. So
what I really like about the...
So, go ahead.
The next cool thing up for .NET 6. And now, Martin, you
Yeah, I think what I like about this effort is also that you basically get to pick and choose which kind of development approach you like. So there's these people who've written XAML before and they're accustomed to the MVVM patterns, and that was like RxUI. And I think now there are new approaches to how to write declarative user interfaces, to model view update patterns, or even use I think there is experimental version for using this Blazor style component syntax for Xamarin Forms. So maybe if you've done web development or Blazor development, you get to use a way of writing code that feels just the same as you've been doing before, like React and React Native. It's something different, but you have the same model. You don't need to learn XAML to use the Xamarin components, for example.
Yeah,
so
that's
something I really like. And SDK-based project stuff. So one project.
Finally, yes.
Oh yeah, SDK style projects everywhere. Cool. What we have also in the notes to general.NET stuff. There was some project tie stuff and shown, I think also from Scott Hunter and so. And Gergely, you said to me before you prepared something for project tie.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit of this?
I can. So this time I don't have a question. I have the answer. Very exceptional. Okay, so I will do screen sharing, and I promise that we will do some giveaway here, and we will do that with Project Tie. So let me share my screen. Does that work? Can you see it?
Yeah, we see it.
Perfect. Okay, so
perhaps a little bit zoom in. If you can zoom a little bit into the code, then afterwards.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm trying. Whoa.
Thank you.
Okay, I hope you can see it. Okay, so what is Project Tie? I think this is a really, really nice tool. So what we have here is basically two applications. There is a backend and there is a frontend. The backend is an ASP.NET Core Web API project. So it will basically just return a string, and here are the people that are in the pool to win the license for JetBrains. And then there is a front end which simply goes to the backend and then reads the data and shows the winner on the UI. Now, if you have something like this, I do lots of demos, and it's super hard, or not hard, but it's super annoying to start both these projects and then make sure that the front end calls the backend on the correct server or on the correct port, and just basically, if you have 5 similar projects and starting those, and that's super complicated and unnecessary. Or in Visual Studio, you just do the checkbox to make sure that all of them are started. And Project Tie is basically a .NET Global tool, and with that you can once you install that, then you basically have a command line. And in this folder, I have the backend and the folder, and I can just say tie run. And what it does is that it basically discovers every project in the folder, and it starts that for you. And it also prints the IDs of that process, and it also shows you the URL where it was started. And what it also has additionally, it also gives you a library, and this library is this Microsoft Tie extensions configuration. And what you can do with that is basically when you configure, for example, your HTTP client in the front end that calls the backend, you can just say configuration get service URI backend. The backend, this string, this was discovered, that's the name of the backend project, and it will basically give you the URL of the backend project that was automatically started for you. So this way, basically the projects from your folder can talk to each other. And what you also get, this is really nice, you get a dashboard. So you can go here, and this shows you all the projects that were started for you. And once I click to the front end, we will basically see, in case everything worked out, we will call the front end, which calls the back end, and we will see the winner of the 1-year JetBrains license. So the winner is Arnold, and this is recorded, so we can't cheat here. We will contact you through meetup.com. We will probably need your email address, and then you will get a JetBrains license that you can basically activate. Yeah, so that's basically Project Tie. Another nice thing about this is that this is not only about projects, so it automatically discovers your projects, but you can also add a config file to it, and you can even start a Docker container. So if this depends, let's say your application depends on Redis, you can just add there is another command line for that with tie.init, and what it does is that it created a YAML file, and in that file you can add you can say, okay, I need Redis Docker, and then once you do tie start, then it will also start Redis for you. You can like it, you can, I mean, that part is to me not that important, but just discovering the projects is, in my opinion, super awesome. Yeah, so basically that's it.
Cool.
What I also like about it is basically you can also package your application up to run it in Kubernetes, right? Because all of that package management and stuff is like, yeah, once you've got your application, you need to write a lot of YAML files to even get it to run in Kubernetes. And once you try to package it up in a Helm chart, you need to learn Go templates and do a lot of configuration, and this hopefully will make it a lot easier. So.
Cool. And you can use it already. I saw at .NET Core 3.1 target framework. So this is what you can already try out with current .NET Core and don't need a preview of .NET Core.
Yeah, I mean this is basically just a global tool, right? So you can use it. The only thing that I would mention here is that the version is still like 0 point something. So I think this is heavily preview. So keep that in mind. But yeah.
Cool, but looks cool and promising for a small application where you don't need the big setup.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm not sure, like for bigger systems, you probably already have something in place like Kubernetes, and Docker also solves many of these problems. But if you just have a couple of projects where you just wanna, quickly start those up and make sure that they find each other, for that, I think this is amazing. So for my demos, I will probably use this a lot.
Cool. Any other general .NET news that you had in mind what were interesting in the build before we move to the next bigger topic? What would be C# 9 and perhaps beyond?
No. 1.2 .NET 5. The question is when .NET 5 will be launched, because it's in preview currently, and during the build conference they announced the .NET Conf 2020 on the 10th November, and they say they will launch .NET 5 at this conference in November. Although 10th November is the day where Microsoft promised to ship it. Hopefully.
So no pressure for you, Alexander and Viktor. Cool. Good. Then we have an additional meetup date and the topic. Cool. Then let's move to C# 9. There was a big blog post, and I think there was also some sessions from Matt. I don't speak now his name because I will butcher it. About the new C# 9 features. So let's make a short run. What do you think, every one of you? What is for you the coolest new feature in C# 9 that will come? Martin, let's start with you.
Yeah, I think a lot of I think the really greatest feature for me going forward, I think, will be records, right? So you're finally able to define types that give you value equality, and also being able to have some mutability concepts in the language itself that helps you do a lot of that. So I actually do have a bit of a demo here, if you don't mind.
Let's finish the round and then get more into deep in the different features. Let's see how many points records gets. Gergely, what's your favorite?
Yeah, I mean, pattern matching is one thing that I really like. I played with C# a little bit, previously, and I really love that C# can also pattern match basically on everything, and now you can use and not, the not keyword in a pattern. I think that's nice.
Cool. One for pattern. Viktor?
Yeah, for me it would be no main method needed, because I love short programs, and if I don't need to specify like the whole namespace and a class, then I can finally write a Hello World application with a single line of code. That makes me happy.
Okay, interesting choice. Alexander, what's yours?
Yeah, that would actually have been mine as well, but
also,
yeah. So it's really nice to shorten down the way, like the amount of code you need to write for a Hello World, because I do that a lot of the time.
And then, like, imagine that you have one solution with like 5 projects without the main and all that stuff, and with project I you can start those without writing .NET Run. How cool is that?
Right. Yeah. I also remember I had to use like .NET Script or some CSX file to write these short demos, and now I can do it with .NET New and .NET Run.
Yeah. And ideally, you would be able to do .NET Run the CS file directly without going through a project. That would be nice.
Good. Raoul, what's your favorite feature?
My favorite was also the record types and the data equality, where you can say if the type equals record equals like the other object, and all properties are equals. But I'm really afraid of covariant returns, where you can override the return type of a method to a more specific type. And I'm really afraid of this, on how it's used in the future, what impact of old code has. So.
Yeah, it will be fun. Good. Okay, I would also vote for records. So we have 3 points for records, 2 for the no main method needed, and 1 for the pattern matching. Yeah. Okay, we have a winner. Okay. So Martin, you said you have a short demo for the records. Could you show us this?
A bit, yeah, of course. I mean, there are a few things going on, right? So basically, we usually like to write classes, like a person class with a first name and a last name, and we like to set these. But one of the problems that occurs with this is basically because it's a class and it has a setter method, I could just change it, right? So it could change my first name to something else, and it would just work. But if I want to make this read-only or init only, I would have to write constructors. And one of the features that leads to records is basically being able to set this value as, yes, I can set it, but only during initialization, right? So there will be a new init keyword that will let me set this value during initialization, but then not later on, right? So I can use it in an initializer, but not set it afterwards. But of course, there will be shorthand syntaxes to define these. So if I have a person class that basically are constructed from a first name and a last name, I could also annotate this class as a data class and directly specify the properties that I want to make this class into. So if I'm just having a person class that has just 2 properties, I can write it like this. Use it in a constructor. And then also, I should be able to copy it, right? So
one
other
curly
person should
bracket
be
too much.
Yeah, thanks. It's mob programming now, right? And what I will able to do then with mutation is I'm actually able to create a copy. So I would do a mutation on write. So I can basically change multiple properties, but only do it on a copy of these. And what it will also give me is value-based equality. So for example, if I'm writing like ID types or using integer types, I could also create data structs. So because, for example, if you write a database application or we have like strings with identifiers, you will see, no, I'm not a text editor because I have strings everywhere. So maybe I want to have like public data struct document ID, which could be an integer for, I don't know, bucket and int ID. Right, so I could have value-based equality, because what the compiler will do behind the scenes is actually generate all these equality comparers, like the equals method. So for example, if I want to use this as a primary key in a database, I could do that. I could wrap strings in struct, so that's probably something I'll be doing a lot because I like to have proper types stand for what they actually mean and not throw ints and strings around all the time. And so this is something that's probably going to help a lot. So we would have equality methods generated. We can have construction and deconstruction. So I should be able to do a var first last equals person. So can use deconstruction as well. This doesn't work in the previews yet because these things are just in development. So I hope that over the next month, these will be showing up in Visual Studio. So right now I'm using SharpLab.io with a custom build from different branches because there are different feature branches of Roslyn. So this is like built yesterday. But that's the idea of using the syntax. But of course, if I want to add more methods or even more other properties, I could still do that, right? I could add different constructors in here. I could add methods in here. I can even not use this part and define all the properties myself, which also means I will not get automatic deconstruction, for example. So this is a bit of an overview over what's coming. I think they're going more into detail would take an hour or more.
Cool. Thanks for this. One question from me already. Because we saw sometimes the code that's really generated behind it, this would mean we can also use this in a .NET standard library or so. This is not bound to a .NET runtime. Or?
So I think this hasn't yet been decided.
Okay.
One of the issues currently is you also need to tell the compiler that you actually support it. So there's a bit of nasty stuff down there. Theoretically, it should work on all the CLR types. The problem is it will generate IL code that is actually not verifiable. Like, it should work, but it will not be able to verify in IL verifiers. So the IL may look a bit strange to some tools. I think these are some of the details that still need to be figured out. I think there are GitHub discussions around that, because you need some things to like mark a setter as like private or not visible to older compilers, but tell the new compilers that it's able to use it. So this needs an attribute. And also there are some types that the compiler checks that are available during compilation to allow you to use these features. So we'll see on where this will actually be usable. So this is, I think, more of a compatibility discussion that's going on rather than an actual platform or target framework compatibility.
Cool. Yeah, we still have some time left. C#9. What's the roadmap for that? Should it be in with .NET 5 or is it separate?
Yeah, C#9 is part of .NET 5.
Okay, cool.
And I also wanted to show a demo around what was the name of the feature?
The no main method.
No main method. Yeah.
Yeah. Let's make.
I love
this...
it so much. I want to show a demo.
Yeah. Let's make this demo and then let's make our 10-minute break.
Okay.
And then continue.
So, okay. So can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. So it's the same application that I showed before, just a Hello World application. So what I'm doing here, I'm setting the length version in the project file to preview, and in the program CS file now you can see a single line of code. When I'm compiling the file, you can see with the .NET that I downloaded, you can see that the build now does not succeed. That's wonderful. That succeeded before. Okay. Okay, so I guess my demo failed. The system console write line. Okay, let's assume the demo did not fail. So what we are planning is, like, we're not planning that, we are just discussing that also on Twitter, not really officially, but something that we mentioned before is there was a tool called Script CS where you could just write script code and then execute it. And Alexander already mentioned that something really nice would be to be able to do something like .NET Run, program CS, and that it just runs the CS file without needing a project file. So what we were thinking about, what would really be nice, would be a way to specify MSBuild references, like project references or package references, also as part of this, like something like R newtons of the JSON, for example, or let's say package reference and reference another project like x.dll, or another way to express that. So this hasn't been designed at all, but just a bit of thinking about that would be to just allow the whole XML code like project, and then you specify an item group.
Martin, look away.
Yeah, like something like this. Package reference include Newton stuff.json. And yeah, no version, because at some point we will have default version support in NuGet.
That's
Something like that. But this is completely not designed at all yet, but I saw a discussion on Twitter about that, and we were discussing that a year ago already, and it would be a nice thing to have if we support single file applications and no main method needed. That would be something to think of as the next step for, let's say, .NET 6 or so. Yeah, that's all of my demo.
cool. Thank you. So, when I first saw this feature, I was skeptical. Why do I need this? And I found then in the sessions, they got into deeper, and one reason they pointed out is for learning the language, to make it easier, because you without the main method you remove a lot of boilerplate code that you have to explain additionally what it's doing, or say ignore it for now. From this 10 lines, what hello world is, only this console write line is the interesting one.
Right. Also another use case would be, just assume that you're doing job interviews over Skype or somewhere, and you're using those kind of source, not generators, those source coding tools. And then you would write JavaScript versus C#, and you would need that kind of boilerplate. It just looks bad in comparison to other languages. And for job interviews, I think it's ideal because you can just start coding without any necessities around it.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Yeah, that's these small features that make it easier for new people to learn the language. We should never forget about these. Yeah, we are all in this industry since years. Some when we started also. Good. The time for part 1 of our nice little talk show is now over. Let's make a 10-minute break, so until 19:30, and then let's start with the second part. Talk a little bit about pattern matching. C# source generators is a topic, and we have also some small Azure stuff and code spaces coming up. Good. So let's have a short break, and we see us all in 10 minutes. And sound. And we are back.
Perfect.
Good. Break is over. Let's continue with the C#9 features. Martin found some shots from presentation from the C#9 feature. So, Gergely, you mentioned pattern matching. The improvements is one of your features where we are looking for. So what is, do you know what everything is new from the screenshot from the post? What is already possible? I have some guesses.
So one of them is actually the ability to use expressions as pattern matching. So for example, you can use like lower, greater, or equal than as part of pattern matching. And you'll also be able to use logical constructs, so defining like not null, not a type, as a pattern. So the decision that was basically influencing this is not reusing these double ampersand or using the word or instead of the two pipes, because these already have a meaning in C#, and not be able to use actual words for pattern matching, so that and these would only be usable somewhere that you can actually use patterns in. So you can check if something is not null, and I believe there will also be like and or patterns, but I'm not sure if they'll actually be implemented yet. So not will be very usable. I think I also posted a oh yeah, and can be used, right? Perfect.
Yeah, that's cool. I think also the type is new.
Type is actually not should actually be already usable. Okay. I think there was some improvements in how these nested constructs are used. So you can should be able to also condense some switch expressions or switch statements into one another, both by combining things, but also be able to I think use some new property patterns. But I'm not sure which of these are new. And
Cool. Looking forward to use this. From the other C# features, we discussed it shortly in the break. There's this target type new, and Raoul described it the other way around.
Yeah, I think it's basically in all of the places where the compiler actually knows which type you should be using. So this can be when you don't use the var patterns, but use like person something equals, or I think what's more usable in places where like you're writing you're calling functions and the function expects a type as a parameter, or you're using an initializer, so you create a new list of address and use an initializer list. So in all of these places that the compiler actually already knows which type you should be creating, you can just omit the type name in the new. So you can write new and directly call add a constructor list, add an initializer body if needed, and just omit the type name.
Cool.
So saving a few keystrokes.
Yeah, and they are costly. Parameter null checking. I'm now irritated. I thought we have now nullable reference types, and if I have activated this and I don't make a string question mark, this is marked as it is not null. Why do we have now parameter null checkings with exclamation marks after the parameter name?
Right, because it's one of the things where there's a difference between like C# the language, .NET the runtime, and what is actually a compiler feature, what is a language feature, what's a runtime feature. And so the runtime still allows things to use null in places where you use reference types. So if you're using the actually non-nullable reference types in C#8, the compiler will give you warnings, but you can also turn off these warnings, or you have code that is not compiled with this feature. So if you want to enforce these contracts, you should also write some if statements and throw argument null expressions, but this can be quite tedious, right? So Rosin will add just some code generation that you should then be able to use in C#9 when you just write an exclamation mark to actually have the compiler generate these if statements for you. So you don't have to write this if it's null, throw argument null exceptions, right? This can be quite tedious. So if you want to have a strong public contract, my suggestion is make sure that you at least have these nullable annotations, right? Because nullable reference types can be used with the compiler warnings enabled, but you can also use it just to generate the contract so that people who turn on this feature will get the right warnings. But then if you want to go full on board and just don't write this boilerplate code, you can add these banks to the parameter, and Rosin will also generate these checking statements to make sure that the method is or that the code that you write is always has the guarantee of the contracts that you require from your colleagues.
Cool. That's yeah, with the combination variable reference types, that could be cool. Good. The last one here, covariant returns, the feature where Raoul has fear about, that we make stuff. Does anybody of you know what is the use case of this feature? So for that you don't know. As far as I remember, is that you can in an inherit class define a different time that in the virtual method. So here in the first class A you have a get member which returns type person, and when class B inherits from it and overrides this method, it defines a student type as a return type. What is the use case for this? Does anybody know of you?
I mean, one of the interesting use cases would be something like a clone method, right? So if you have like a person and you maybe have student, which maybe derives from person, which probably you should not write code like that, but maybe that's the case. You have a clone method. So in instances where you actually know you're dealing with a student and you want to call like something, hey, deep clone, a method that you write, maybe generate, and you get back an object or a person, you would need to cast it again to the type that you expect. So in a lot of cases where you're just calling a method, but also expecting a more specific return type, you can actually change the method that you implement in the class itself, in the subclass, to return a more specific type as a return parameter.
To save the cast then.
Right, to save your cast. So it doesn't really change a lot if you're using with older compilers or different code. You just get the contract guarantee that this method will return the more specific type.
Cool. Okay, now I get it. Good. That's to the C#9 features. One also a C#. I'm always unsure what C# source generators are now. Are they a language feature? Are they a .NET something feature? What are they? Can somebody explain it in short words for me?
Yeah, so I think that's a thing that has been discussed a lot. So actually, first, what are source generators? So if you just let me share my screen again, I can give you a quick. Oh, nope.
That was a quick share.
Quick overview. Right. So source generators are a compiler feature, right? It's a feature of the compiler. Currently, the feature is in preview, which means you need to enable a language preview mode, which should go away like at the release of the new compiler versions. But so source generators you can already use if you opt into language previews in Visual Studio 15.6 or the SDK 3.1.300+. And what source generators do is actually they're a plugin for the compiler, where the compiler will like analyze the source code that the user writes, and then asks these plugins, hey, this is the code that I'm about to compile. Do you have anything to add to it, right? So you can generate new code, add it to the current compilation, and then the compiler will carry on, right? So what you can't do with it is you cannot rewrite source code, but you can add to it. So how could this look like? So things that we've been building for some time and that I like to do is, for example, if you use a lot of data-driven applications, so business applications that deal with a lot of data objects or entity objects, and you want to write testing, then it's always good to have some kind of builder methods. So for example, in this case, I have an address class, which has a few required properties, a few optional ones. It also has a constructor that it can use. And then I generated a source generator that will generate me helper classes to actually work with these objects for example, for unit tests. So what I did, I have a generate data builder attribute that I can just add to classes. And behind the scene, it will generate a code file that will look a bit like this. So it would have an address builder with some private properties and a lot of constructor methods, with methods, without methods. Also a build method that calls the right constructor, sets optional types, does some checking. So what I'll be able to do then is inside of a single project, I can write these classes, add the attribute, and then be able to actually use this builder class that I generate. So for example, I can have tests with like a default address, where I can maybe add with floor two, and then maybe in my test I can just say, yeah, I want to have a default address. I don't care about it, but without the floor, and then I'll be able to just build the object from there. And this is something that I like to do for testing. But of course, there are different applications as well. So for example, there are a lot of things in .NET currently that are based on reflection. So one of them would be serialization. Like every time you write serialization attributes, like, hey, yeah, I want these properties to be part of a JSON. I want to use XML serializations. So a lot of these are actually reflection based, and reflection is like a very good tool that .NET has that maybe isn't that great in other languages, Swift. But the goal would be to make .NET faster, make it ahead of time compilable, where you don't want to do like runtime code generation. You want to be able to compile it as good as possible, which also means then having a mechanism to move a lot of these runtime compilation, runtime inspection things to the compile phase. And source generators will be able to enable that. And that's one part of it. The other part is like when you use something that generates a contract. For example, if you're using OpenAPI, like Swagger, which will generate a JSON file describing the APIs that you use, you can then generate classes to use these APIs. Or if you're using protobuf, for example, for gRPC, you get these protobuf definitions, these protofiles, and you can then use source generators to generate the classes to work with for your code from this file as well during compilation.
Cool. So yeah, it's another way to hook into the compile pipeline to generate code. So this could also be, like I said, an alternative to PostJob or Fodi.
Yeah, so again, you can only add to the compilation. Like currently, there is no mechanism to rewrite your code. So for these, you would still need some IL weaving tools.
Okay.
But if you only want to add to a compilation, you can do this with source generators.
Cool.
And currently, these will be able to run in Visual Studio during build time. So the main issue that's been taking these features so long to evolve is actually how to integrate with the IDE, because Roslyn is a very advanced compiler platform which can on every keystroke do some incremental recompilation. So extending these for like running generators on each keystroke is maybe not a great option, but hopefully in the future there will be APIs to register things like, yeah, I have added an attribute to a class, for example, as a trigger to trigger my generator, or I have changed this protofile on disk, please run my generator again. So things that you can probably do in Visual Studio as well.
Cool. So okay, so you mentioned in Visual Studio, are they also generated? How are they bound now currently to Visual Studio, and is will they stay? Will there be changes? Can I run in a CI build?
So yeah, currently they're implemented the same as analyzers. So for example, if you add a package reference to a package that also provides analyzers that give it as squigglies, these packages, these analyzers can now add source generators as well. So it works in CI builds, it works in command line builds, and it works in Visual Studio as well.
Cool. Okay, okay, interesting feature. I'm looking forward what the community comes up with. I definitely want your builder generator somewhere, because this would save me a lot of boilerplate
Yeah,
code to write.
I have to ask the customer that actually pays us to write this.
I see. Yeah, perhaps some inspiration for somebody else.
But again, a lot of these like with or without stuff should be able to be done with like withers and data classes in C#9. So let's see.
That's also true. Good. Let's switch topic to something completely else, or somebody wants to add to C# features. Any last comments? Good. Then let's switch to something else. Azure. There were some announcements. One particular with a strange name: App Service Static Web Apps. 2 times apps. Good. Naming is hard. What is this now? Raoul, you are our Azure expert.
Yes. Static web apps, we know it's something similar to GitHub pages, but with a little bit more features. So I can share it a little bit. What is it?
Yes, please.
One. So, static web apps are successor or evolution of GitHub pages. Main point is it's the code is left on GitHub, and when I make a static web app in Azure, it builds the action for me and hosts the whole content for me. It's not only for static site generations, but also for Angular apps and Vue apps and where I have just static content in JavaScript. But the difference to to GitHub pages is that I'm able to have authorization and role models and my own routes on these static web apps. So I can, for front-end apps are written in Angular, but I just have a backend, like function apps or web API backend. I only need to host the front end. I can have a full Azure role model support, the security model, where I can say which person can edit it, which then can authenticate with Azure Active Directory, Facebook, Google, GitHub, Twitter for customer-side apps. Can customize the authorization role definitions and make roles, and I can also have my own backend routing rules. I can say on this side you need this role to open it. So it's a little bit more than GitHub pages, where I just have my static content. So I have a static enterprise-able GitHub pages, I would call it, where I'm more able to control what I deliver to the customers or the site viewers. So yeah,
that's cool.
Yeah, and the good thing is also I can also use it more better for GitHub pages, where currently I have to when I have static site generators like Gatsby, Hugo, or the WordPress or Jekyll is the most used, I think, in GitHub pages. I write my site locally, make a second branch where I publish my site and have all the things done locally, or write my own GitHub actions. And now GitHub static web apps can make this for me. All I need is a GitHub account and an Azure account. Yeah, that's static web apps, and for more front end. And so in this cloud native world where I have only my static Azure website, and for the backend my Azure functions, it's the use case that I don't need more host something, a whole full-blown Node.js server or a full-blown IIS server for my app. So I can just I have an Angular front end and can host it on a cheaper web app, static web app. Yeah.
Cool.
Right, and you still get all these cool build features like having Kudu to just push your Angular code and it will build it and deploy it, and all that great stuff that already works with Azure Web Apps, right?
Yeah. So this is they use the whole GitHub Actions in the background. When you create a web app, I have for the meetup I create one, and the only thing what Azure does in your repository is add this YAML file for GitHub workflows, GitHub Actions, and you can extend this build workflow like for each other GitHub action, and I can make all other actions. I can have them my secrets for my as a variable during the GitHub build action build. Yeah, it's a cool feature.
Well, looks like a nice, easy way to quickly host your static content, what you need for your application. Yeah, like single page applications with a .NET backend. That's cool. Cool. And it's currently in preview, so I checked that there's currently no pricing available as far as I remember.
Yeah, currently it's all free.
For what? What is free?
Everything is free with static web apps.
Oh, okay.
Host this one, and it's
More interesting.
costs nothing. But it's just a small HTML page, just index HTML.
Yeah, okay, that's small.
And I don't know the name of and I don't have a custom domain for the demo, so and forgot to open the page.
So you have a big one, I don't remember the name.
It's a very funny name, so I copied it from a portal. It's green minus beach minus static apps, and yeah, the hosting. And as far as when I change something, so oops, not save. In the browser I don't have Ctrl S, and when I save it, the action will be started, and as in 2 minutes all changes are on my static web app. But I don't think we wait on this.
Yeah, we
So
will believe you.
yeah,
But
everybody can
that's cool.
make the URL and can show it in 2 minutes.
Yeah, if you paste it in the chat, I can paste it to the Twitch chat.
So I stop sharing. So I posted in the chat.
So have fun to. Please don't DDoS this stuff. Good. That was Azure. That's at least for me the big interesting stuff. What's most influential for us? There were a lot of other news, but I think this is the interesting one for normal .NET developers. Do you want to add something, Raoul?
No, I thought the rest of the news was that in Azure that a lot of IoT stuff comes and IT enterprise stuff, and also that many functions come to Azure Stack, the on-premise Azure, but not big news for .NET developers.
Good. Then switching to the next topic. There was a project, and I don't remember if it was announced, but I think I heard the name there at the build the first time. Project Reunion. I found the blog post with a title from Microsoft. This was developing for all 1 billion Windows 10 devices and beyond. So what? Project Reunion, what is happening? Do I get Windows 3.11 APIs back? Viktor, you mentioned you know something a little bit about this Project Reunion. Can you a little bit elaborate what this is?
Sure. So I don't know much about it because it's a different team. But still, what I what I know about it is that Project Reunion is a set of, it's grouping Win32 APIs and UWP APIs together in one set of APIs, and that you can just target Project Reunion. And the thing is, Project Reunion will be deployed out of band, which means it's not part of the operating system, but it will be, an example, deployed as a NuGet package that you then can reference. Then you can reference those APIs. Also, the nice thing that the blog post announced is that they will polyfill the existing APIs. So if they add a set of APIs, which is which is supported on the latest version of Windows, but not on, let's say, 1709, then they will polyfill those APIs to make them work on 1709 Windows 10. I think that's definitely a nice step regarding in terms of making sure that you can target a single set of APIs for Windows, which was kind of weird in the last years because you have Win32 and UWP, and UWP devs were not really happy about the limited set of APIs. Both also Win32 API developers were not really happy about not being able to access UWP APIs, because in some areas they are definitely superior. So Project Reunion tries to solve that, and honestly, I would say, to me, it looks similar to .NET Standard, .NET Standard, where you have different implementations underneath, and you can just target .NET Standard, and then whatever will be run underneath is chosen by the implementation.
Cool.
So just based on the blog post, I think it's a great feature. Some of the consumers that are already using Project Reunion are WinUI, which is the Fluent API framework that was built for UWP APIs, but now WinUI 3 will also be available for Win32 API consumers. Like you will be able to use WinUI in WinForms and WPF. Another consumer is Microsoft Terminal. Those also use the Project Reunion, and as part of WinUI, the new WebView 2 control, which uses Chromium underneath, that is also available and uses Project Reunion.
That sounds promising. Sounds for me with Project Reunion and WinUI 3, you can choose the best of all the worlds to write your desktop application. Have the power of Win32 APIs, but have the nice UWP APIs with additional features, and you can use all controls that were made somewhen.
Yeah.
That's nice, and probably also nice for all the legacy desktop applications out there to give them a way forward to live the next 20 years.
Yeah, to be honest, I think it's the only sane way going forward, because to be competitive, you need a single set of APIs that you can target. And for example, the same on iOS or Android, you have a set of APIs that you target, and now this should also be possible on Windows, finally.
Yeah, I remember the first days of UWP, where file access. There are no file APIs. You have to open dialogues that the user can access it. Yeah.
Or implement system.thread, system threading thread.
There was no threading, or what?
No, there is no thread class. If you wanted to use a library that like creates a background thread and uses the thread APIs, you would have to do, like, at least in .NET, you'd have to basically stub out thread APIs, right?
Yeah, okay, good that I didn't know that until now. Good, but
so it's part of this compatibility story, right? So maybe shouldn't you write code that uses like threads, like their new task-based APIs, but you may have legacy code that you don't want to or cannot port.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So cool, but cool for the desktop developers and in our community. This is definitely something they look into and see how they can refresh their applications with this. Cool. Good. That's something. Yeah, opens new possibilities for the developers. Our next topic will also open new possibilities. The name is code spaces, and I heard it with different prefixes on build or before. There were GitHub code spaces, and there are Visual Studio code spaces. And the funny thing is, I think last build they announced Visual Studio Online, so they reused the original name of Azure DevOps. And now they already renamed Visual Studio Online to Visual Studio Codespaces. So I'm irritated now. Now there are two stuff with the same name. They should do the same. What can somebody enlighten me, please?
So right, the technology behind them is basically the same. I'm happy that they found a new name that doesn't turn up loads of search results already for all the different products. So the idea is that basically you're able to remote all the things that Visual Studio or any code editor does. So the idea is at least for GitHub, if you are a GitHub user and you want to contribute to a project, or you want to edit your code on the go, or just using a browser, or even just a lightweight development environment, you're able to do that. So, and the technologies that lies behind it is code spaces from like a Visual Studio Code or Visual Studio side, which will spin up a VM in Azure, run all the editor services. So the Roslyn compiler, for example, if you're using a .NET program, or the Angular and TypeScript servers, if you're using like Angular behind the scenes. But this feature can also be used from different clients. So it can be used from Visual Studio Code as well. And actually GitHub just uses Visual Studio code spaces and integrates them into GitHub, because Visual Studio Code is already a web-based IDE. So for example, if you like, I think the URL is still online@visualstudio.com, which will hopefully change soon. But for example, you can create custom code spaces where you can say, yeah, I just want to have a very beefy Linux machine or a small Linux machine. I think Windows machines are coming soon, because maybe I just want to develop from a browser. But you can also register custom code spaces. You can go into Visual Studio Code and say, yeah, I would please like to register my machine as a host, which I've done for a machine. So for example, this will now remote into a machine that I have at home. Or at least it should be doing that.
And by remote, you do not mean remote desktop. It's actually like an SSH connection or some TCP
It is
connection.
actually a proxied connection to my machine. So the editor front end, which is basically Visual Studio Code, the Visual Studio Code IDE, this is web-based, right? So this runs in my browser, but it is communicating remotely into my machine at home. This feature is already available in Visual Studio for like remote developing on Linux machines and just running the IDE front end on your local machine. But this can also be done remotely. It can be done in local environments that you provision, or online environments that are provisioned on the fly. So in theory, I could also add config files to my project that tell Visual Studio Code, for example, I want to have these 5 plugins for this application, or for this Git repository, and anyone that will open this Git repository in a code space, for example, from GitHub code spaces, would then have these plugins installed into their remote development environment. But still, I get all these features here. I can open a terminal.
Can you open
new
the terminal and make host name.
host name. So this is currently home.
Okay.
I do have a CPU here. Right. And I can even, if I go into different project, no, NuGet, okay.
As usual.
Since I don't have a project that is actually running, the idea is that you can also proxy local ports. But the idea is I will be able to run any extension that Visual Studio Code understands. I will be able to install and run in these remote environments. So, for example, I can start the C# compiler and the OmniSharp based C# Visual Studio Code extensions remotely, and then be able to develop my .NET application through a front end that understands this remoting protocol. So through Visual Studio Code spaces, or hopefully this will also come to Visual Studio soon, where you have things like, yeah, you're opening a Windows C++ project, but you don't want to install tons, I think tens of gigabytes of C++ development kits for the different Windows versions. You would also be able to do that remotely in Visual Studio. So right now, I think we should have like all the editor goodness that we know and expect from Visual Studio Code through the web as well. And GitHub will then integrate these into the GitHub UI so that it will be easier for like forking a project and just clicking edit and having a language context during edits. And of course, I can have a terminal and should be able to run benchmarks as well. Or at least run .NET Build. Yeah, but I think there is some issue now with NuGet that I may have to fix on my machine. But again, you can use the power of your remote machine. So in this case, I have a bit more powerful server that I can use, but I should be able to use this remotely from even an iPad. Right, so
that's cool. So I only need anymore one beefy PC or a beefy Azure VM and can have some light, not so powerful laptop with me. That's easier to travel and so.
Exactly.
Cool.
So as long as you have an internet connection, you should be fine. And again, the idea is to have these integrated into GitHub and into IDEs as well. So you can even do pull request reviews, or for example, or edit branches directly from a review or a on the go, if you want to do that directly from GitHub as well. So I think that's really interesting as well. I think Raoul also thinks about using it in education, right?
Yes, I think it would be a nice use case when you have students and they must install everything for the lecture, and you can have just a script in the GitHub repository, and they make their own code space for each project, and they don't have to install everything you need for the lecture and configure the Visual Studio or configure Visual Studio Code with all the extensions. So they can just click and say, hey, create me a code space, and they can work and make the assessment or something else. It would be a nice use case so for education, learning stuff.
I think it could also be a solution for project work when you have when new people join your project, they have already pre-set up VM for them. They simply press on a button in Visual Studio and get the source, and everything is set up with all of the dependencies on a VM. And when you have there are still dependencies that are not distributed by NuGet packages, Android SDK, or something like that. You could then manage for the whole team that the whole team at once switches to the new SDKs. So this could also or have project setups. How many times we had a project, then 9 months you didn't work on it because your customer was happy, then a change request come and you spent 2 days to simply update the project to the latest SDKs and so that you can build it again. So at least that was my experience with Android native applications. So really Android, no Xamarin applications.
Right, and I think especially for my data science colleagues, we're always struggling to configure their Python environment. So like, if you want to use Python for data science, you already need some virtual environment set up, right? And these can be some fancy Docker containers, but of course these could also be code spaces.
Yeah.
Because it works similar to having node modules, but globally.
Okay, yeah, it's a little bit bigger than node modules from the space. Good. Yeah, I think that was a good introduction to code spaces. Personally looking forward into this. Also to make it easier for my open source project to people to contribute to it. For a few of these are currently in preview, in private preview, and you can request access to them. Yeah, separate. So there's one preview for GitHub and one for Visual Studio Code Spaces. Good. Now to our last topic, and we changed in the break shortly the topic. The topic was in the next Visual Studio version there will be a new Git experience, and I wanted to ask our guest what they say about it and if they tried it already. And yeah, the answers were differently. So the question is now, what is your favorite Git environment at the moment, and would you use it in Visual Studio? So, Raoul, what are you using to work with Git?
Command line. I think
Okay.
most of us use the command line, but I also use the preview version of Visual Studio since Visual Studio has a preview version. I'm always working only with the preview version, and I think that the new GitHub feature in Visual Studio is a good evolution, and it's better than the old one, with more natural Git style, but has some improvements are left. So yeah, but for a short, when I'm working with Visual Studio for short commits, it's okay. Yeah.
Okay. Good. Martin, what are you using?
Yeah, my Git experience is the Windows terminal. So,
so also command line on Windows,
yeah.
Windows terminal. Gergely? What are you using?
Mine is the macOS terminal.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Viktor, what's your Git client of choice?
Same. I would say I use the Microsoft Terminal.
Okay. And Alexander?
Yeah, same for me. I'm working on the Mac and I'm also using the terminal. So.
Okay, good. So I'm personally using most of the time Git extensions. Yeah, normally a command line uses, but for Git somehow I never got to it. And one thing that irritated me in Visual Studio was the different naming of stuff. So got stuck with Git extensions, but I'm looking forward for the new one in Visual Studio.
I mean, there's also this client. It's called Git Fork, which I think its killer feature is it has an interactive rebase wizard where you can like select commits that you want to apply and select the like edit or squash
Okay.
but
interesting to know. Good. That was our last prepared topic for today, and we're in our time box. So last chance for viewers to ask questions to our guest before I ask my last questions to them. Last questions. Okay. Let's. Okay, good. Nothing there. Yes?
We could also ask them a question.
Okay.
For example, are other people also very upset that there is no free food with meetups these days? That's what I hate with the online meetups. Write a plus in Twitch if you agree.
That's the check if the viewers are still there.
Yeah. Exactly. if you don't we have one response. If you don't write any response, there won't be food in the next on-person meetup or in-person meetup. Let's threaten the people.
Yeah. Also,
Okay,
like if you're watching, please comment from which city you're watching from, right?
We are worldwide. Good. Yeah, Thomas. Hi, Thomas. We have some multiple pluses doesn't count, Thomas. Good. Some answers from the viewers come there. So my last question to you is, what was your favorite from the MSBuild announcements? Do you have one? And if you had one, what was it? Alexander, let's start with you.
It's really hard to pick a favorite because I love all the .NET announcements. So yeah.
Okay, Viktor. Yeah, for you two, there are no announcements. You already know the whole stuff, or?
Well, no. I didn't know about for example, Windows Package Manager. That's actually one thing that's really cool. So yeah, I like that one.
Okay.
Cool. For me, it would be, and I did not know about it, the Microsoft App UI, the MAUI, because I think it's a great evolution from Xamarin, and just getting everything under one UI framework is fantastic.
Cool. Gergely?
Yeah, it's really hard to pick one. I think Blazor is a nice thing. I played with that. It's not like I'm the target audience for it, but it's really awesome to see that .NET runs on top of WebAssembly. That's kind of cool because what I work on in my job, I was thinking, okay, let's try that. Like I talked about observability in the last meetup, and I was like, let's try that with Blazor, and like I was able to create traces and basically to run the whole thing within WebAssembly, and I think that's really amazing. So, and that's out of preview now, so that's cool.
Good. Martin, what's yours?
Yeah, I actually also think that the multi-platform app UI, like MAUI, is really a great way of moving forward, because even though we like been using Xamarin Forms for a long time and also written some Windows 8 applications or Windows 10 applications, like it's good to have like a new modern way of writing cross-platform applications with support on macOS.
Okay, Raoul.
Yeah, I like the new C#9 features a lot, especially the records and pattern matching. Yeah. So really nice features in the future for C#. And also the hidden Azure announcements. We didn't talk about it, like try if for resource templates and so stuff for development and DevOps stuff.
Cool. Yeah, for me it's the general .NET 5, .NET 6, this whole where we are heading, and this, let's say, bright future, bright futures and bright future we have, and that there is I think there's a lot of efforts in going like desktop applications. Not everything will be browser based. There are a lot of stuff, and now there's really some future for this old desktop applications, or at least at all desktop applications, that you can get the cool stuff to use this. Good. Then this was our talk show about the MSBuild. Thanks to our guests for spending the time today. We are 8 minutes after the time box, so we were nearly in time. Good. Let's say some short closing words, and then let's go to the socializing. So yeah, thanks to our guest to spend the time with us today and answer the questions, go through the topics. Also thanks to our audience for joining and being here the 2 hours now, and yeah, getting the knowledge from us. Again, thanks to our sponsors, Tieto Every. I hope I spelled this correct, Martin. Yeah, they are supporting us financially. That helps to do streams like this. If you have a company or you want to sponsor us, and with us it's the .NET Stammtisch Linz and the DotNetDevs.at, or you will then want to host a meetup in the future, so location, talk with us. Again, the links to it. There's for the .NET Stammtisch Linz, there are some contact details on the website. Here are the links. For the future, for the next month, still looking for speakers and trying to make it fix which speakers. We're working on this for July and August. We're currently planning that at least in September we still have online only meetups, for at least for DotNetDevs.at, so in Vienna. Sorry. We hope that in October we can have again a meetup in person at the location. We will stream, yeah, but this doesn't change. We will all our meetups will be streamed online, so if you can't be there in person, you always have the stream, or you can watch the recordings afterwards. Yeah, if you want to hear a talk about the topic, we have for .NET Austria we have a GitHub repo where you can request topics. Put it there. We will then try to find a speaker for this topic. We want to make interesting meetups for you. So for that we want to know what is the interesting topics for you, and to give you this. Also important, please spread the word that we are here. Invite everybody has to do something with .NET. Point them to our Twitch feeds, streams, to our recordings. You're tweeting also sometimes at .NetDevs.at. And Gergely, what is the Twitter handle for the .NET Linz Stammtisch?
You have so complicated questions. I think it's .NET Stammtisch Linz. No, just .NET Stammtisch. No, I don't know. Yeah, I'm sure it's linked on .NET-Stammtisch.at. So we have .NET-Stammtisch.at, and from there you can find us on every other social media stuff. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, there are the .NET Linz. There is the link.
Yeah, thanks. Exactly. That's the link.
That's the link. I'm pasting it also into the chat here. Gregor
Great.
was faster. Yeah, .NET Stammtisch, the website, the meetup group, Twitter, and you have also a Facebook group. .NETDevs.at, website, Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and the Slack channel. Yeah, you can find us, and there's I think about 50, 60 people, and we are helping each other out with questions in our daily business. Good. So the last one. We always want to improve, and for that we would like to get feedback from you. And as always in the past, we prepared some small feedback surveys. Only some very quickly to answer questions there. Please take your time. I think it doesn't take more than 2 minutes to fill this out. This helps us a lot. Yeah, to adjust the future meetups and everything. So one thing perhaps you notice is that I don't repeat so much from the intro and the outro. That was one feedback I did. This is important for us that we can adjust this. So please take your time. Good. And the last link I will share is the link to the socializing call. So as mentioned, TechTalk sponsoring one Zoom account where we can, I think 25, 49, how many webcams is now working in Zoom? I think 25.
25.
I think it depends on your processor.
Yeah.
Okay. So you have the link to the Zoom call there. Feel free to join it. Now I will join it, and let's have spend some time to chat a little bit, to talk with each other, and perhaps there's still some questions open, and there's sure somebody who can answer these. So thanks again for watching. Thanks again to our guests for spending the time with us, and I hope we see us in the socializing call in a moment. If not, have a nice evening and see you in the next meetup. Bye.
See.